In this video lesson, we'll indicate how and why the British victory in the French and Indian War became one of the causes of the American Revolution. Americans came away from the war having learned valuable lessons. They had a sense of accomplishment and self-esteem. They had experience fighting alongside crack British troops. And they had a realization that British regulars were not invincible, despite their beliefs of that contrary. After the war, Americans viewed themselves as the cutting edge of British civilization, not the contemptible cowards English authorities believed them to be. Britain had grounds for doubting American loyalties to king and country because evidence existed of treasonable trade with the enemy and a reluctance to provide troops and money for the war. English officials questioned the motives of some Americans who shirked their duties and responsibilities but demanded the rights and privileges of Englishmen. Many who refused to provide money and troops during the conflict argued that British officials confiscated supplies from Americans without payment, a situation William Pitt partially remedied by reimbursing approximately £900,000 in monies owed. Other factors involved in American disunity and mixed support for the war included the geographic barriers and distances separating American colonials, religious and ethnic differences, boundary disputes between the colonies, differing forms of colonial government, and long-standing resentments held by settlers on the western frontier in regions against wealthy aristocrats that were living in more settled eastern regions. After the war, Americans exhibited greater independence and looked westward for new opportunities and room to expand, a spirit fostered by the removal of the French threat. For Indians in the Ohio and Mississippi River valleys, the defeat of France meant they no longer play rival European powers against each other in the middle ground and were forced to fight against constant encroachment by white settlers into their territories. In 1763, Chief Pontiac of the Ottawa, sensing this change, allied with some remaining French fur traders in a violent campaign to try to drive British colonials out of the Ohio River Valley. Pontiac's warriors overran all but 3 British forts west of the Appalachian Mountains and killed approximately 2,000 soldiers and settlers. British soldiers violently crushed the uprising, using tactics that included biological warfare, leading to an uneasy truce between whites and Indians. The uprising convinced England of the following needs. They needed peace treaties with Western Indians, and they also needed to post troops on the frontier, which was necessary to prevent future problems. English authorities also expected American colonists to share the expense of stationing troops in the West to protect them, a policy which will anger Americans. The proclamation of 1763, announcing this new policy, drew an imaginary line down the spine of the Appalachian Mountains, representing the point beyond which American colonists were forbidden to move past, at least until peace treaties were concluded with the Native Americans. That line would be drawn here, roughly. The proclamation of 1763 angered Americans, especially land speculators and settlers already living in the Ohio River Valley, which was in this area, and those intending to move there. Americans claimed land to the west as their birthright, land which they had fought for in the French and Indian War. Consequently, Americans defied royal authority and ignored the new policy, and in defying the proclamation, Americans were already developing a new vision of their destiny. By the same token, Parliament and King George III were unwilling to compromise or accept the unruly behavior of American colonials, setting the stage for another round of violence in North America, this time between Great Britain and the colonists.